Hello, Culture Matters podcast. Boy, I'm excited for today. Before I introduce you to our guest, here is one of my favorite quotes. Out of every 100 men, 10 shouldn't even be there. 80 are just targets. 9 are the real fighters. And we are lucky to have them, or they make the battle. But the one is a warrior, and he will bring the others back. Heraclitus. Our guest today, another warrior, back again, the Culture Matters podcast. One of our favorites. If you know the show, you know my friend Aaron Scott Young, founder of the Unshackled Life, proselytizer of winning at all facets of business and working really on and through the business, not just slave to the business, leader, friend, speaker, and now author once again here. Unshackled. I can't wait to get into the book today and do this series on different chapters of the book. Thanks for coming on. I definitely want your thoughts on this quote today, brother. Thanks for coming back.
Well, I love the quote, first of all. So the only part is I was kind of getting mentally ready. So here's what I heard you say I'll paraphrase it. It said that that there were 80 that were the targets. There were 9 that were the fighters. And I thought it said the one at the beginning, one of them shouldn't even be there, is what I
Yeah,
thought.
10. Yeah, 10.
Yeah. 10 shouldn't be there.
Yep.
And 80 are targets.
Yep.
That's 90. 9 are the great battlers.
Yeah, and they
And then
make the battle.
one is sort of the leader that's going to bring them all home, the warrior that'll get them back. Got it. Well, I will tell you that there are very few people in my experience in any facet of life, whether you're in business, in relationships, you're at the doctor's office, whatever it is. The vast majority of people are just marking time. They're just showing up. They're going through whatever they have to do. They're often doing the least they have to do. There are a few that really are they talk about the 80-20 rule, but I would submit that it's hard to get 20% of people to be really active and productive. So yeah, I would believe that. The problem we have with the one that's going to bring everybody home again, the problem with it, and the reason why, and I know we didn't set this interview up to talk about the book, but because you mentioned it, my mind is there. The big problem is if the one person that's going to get them home breaks their leg or gets shot in the battle, right? That means everybody's doomed, versus having a methodology that helps everybody know, even when the one big leader is not there, that their combined efforts are equal to or greater than the one leader, and they can still get home. And that's what we want to do in my world. I'm trying to do that in people's companies so that the leader can be the leader. But if the leader is incapacitated, is off on another project, is on an extended sabbatical, is in a coma, that everything doesn't fall apart, and that the business and whatever promises it's made to its customers will go on and perform well. The leaders are the ones what I love about real leaders, at least in my world, and I think it's true in any part of human existence, that real, honest, true leader is the one who can see the end from where they are right now. They can see the finish line, and while everybody else is getting scared about this new law or this new tax or this angry customer on the phone, or we're going to have to raise prices, or we're going to have to drop prices, or there's shifting going on in the marketplace, the one leader always has their eye on the target. And by having presence of mind and composure, they're able to hold the hand of all those other really great people who are the great warriors, great fighters, and help them not get discouraged by what's right in their face, but keep their eye on the big prize. So I
Mm.
love the quote. I've just pontificated for much longer than the quote was. But I don't know. What do you think of that, Jay? Do you think I'm getting the quote right?
Well said. I mean, how that piece about the first 10, right? Out of every 100 men, 10 shouldn't even be there.
Sure.
Now, how do we know who the 10 are, and what do we do with them, and how do we do that with them?
Well, you know what I love is he doesn't say that we're stuck with a 100 people. He just says as you're going into something, you're going to have a mixed bag of people. You're going to have a few strategic thinkers. You're going to have a whole bunch of process thinkers. So you have the leaders, you have the ones that are going to, whatever, load their gun, walk across, be a target. It said they'll be targets, right? They're going to
Yes,
show up and
80.
do their thing, but they're doing it without they're the targets. That's a great way to say it. They're the ones who have all the people that work in your organization that are doing a good enough job to be there and to keep the machine working. They're not the innovators. They're not necessarily the collaborators. They're just there. They're answering the phone. They're outbound dialing. They're working on a website. They're balancing the checkbook. They leave right at 5 o'clock. Which is okay. That's what they're there for. They're there to be from 8 to 5 and take an hour lunch and 2 15-minute breaks. And that's the life they've chosen for themselves. Now, sometimes we bring people into our organization or into our battalion, and pretty soon you realize they're not a good fit. They don't even belong here. And either you're going to let them go, or they're going to wash out on their own, or they'll do what a lot of the worst people in the battle do, which is they run away, right? They run away. They just don't show up for work. You hire them, they come for 3 days, and then they just never show up again, right? And they don't answer your calls. They ghost you. They weren't a good fit.
Wow.
We tried. They never belonged here in the first place. And we don't mourn them, and we don't punish them like the military would. What we do say is, yeah, they never belonged here.
What do they call that in the military? AWOL?
Well, AWOL is absent without leave. I think what we're talking about is people that are, wow, why did the word just escape me too? They are deserters.
The deserters.
Yeah.
The targets. What relationship do you think they have with the real fighters?
They do what they're told. They march, they line up, they're a big presence. They do a portion of the work. They do a portion of the work. And in business, they're not actually targets. They're just they're part of the critical mass needed to move the battle forward, right? They're driving a truck, they're pushing, they're carrying a load, they're marching. They're part of the thing, and it takes all that firepower to create. If you sent 9 guys up against 100, even if they're a really crappy army, they could probably surround you and take over, right?
Yeah,
So
that's a good point.
you need a lot of action. You need a lot of people working, but there's always going to be just a few that are the ones that are coming up with new ideas, that are that are not so afraid of their own, losing their job or losing their promotion or losing their whatever, that they'll sit with somebody else and collaborate and innovate and come up with a better way. And then they can show those best practices, we call it now. We can show how to the other 80, and they'll pick it up or not, depending on their motivation. If you're in the 80, you're part of the group. You're not deserting. You're doing your part. You're just not a big leader. You're not the one that's gonna. I saw a thing yesterday. I was watching a documentary, and it talked about this local hero in this little British town, and it said what happened was there was a huge naval battle between the Dutch and the British, and the admiral's center mast got hit, and the sail, so the mast broke, so part of the sail tipped, which made it hard to navigate. But the worst part was the flag, the colors were on the top mast,
Mm.
right? And without the colors there, a couple things would happen. One is you didn't know whose ship that was necessarily in the heat of the battle, because there was a whole bunch of ships. But more importantly, if the admiral if they bring their colors down, it can tell the other ships that we're surrendering when they drop their flag. It means they're giving up. So this guy, this local hero, one of the nine, right?
Wow.
One of the nine climbed the mast as a 19-year-old, climbed up the highest pole on the ship to get up there in this broken thing with cannonballs flying, and with his pistol took the colors and nailed them back up to the mast so everybody would know they weren't surrendering.
Mm.
And he was celebrated by the king, certainly by the admiral, by the king later on, and so on, and became a local hero for this one exemplary act of bravery and thinking. He was thinking in the heat of the moment. And I
Huh.
think that's what the nine do, right? That guy didn't get him home, but he saw a problem. He took a chance, believing he understood the culture, right? So in a corporate culture, it's one thing because culture matters, FYI.
Yes, sir.
He understood the culture, so he knew nobody told him to do it. He just saw it and it needed to be done in the fight, so he did it. And that's the nine, But it's the big commander who sees the whole thing, not just the fight, but what are we fighting for, and what do we gain or lose today versus the whole war. That's the one that gets you all the way home.
How about that interplay between the real fighters and the warrior?
Oh, I think that most teams that are really great teams that are really they're the best at what they do, and these people are highly skilled, and everybody knows what the other one's skill is. They still are looking for somebody to tell them go now, go left, go right, stop. Most people need that person who is that sort of safe space that we know if we follow this person, we're going to get back. And it takes a certain kind of person to be willing to take on that responsibility.
Mm.
And that's why I think most successful leaders of any kind of an organization who might, weak leaders think somebody's going to steal my idea. Somebody's going to go take this away from me. The really strong leaders never worry about what's going to get taken away from them. They're so intent on building value and getting the job done that everybody goes, oh, I can count on that person. I'm going to follow them. That's who the one is, in my
How do
opinion.
they lose that?
How do they lose it? I guess by either consistently being wrong, right? They're wrong, but usually they don't get to that position where anybody trusts them without having been right, right? So they either have to change their behavior in some way that's negative or hurtful to the group. I keep trying to take this back to current days, right? So either they're going to change their behavior. Well, it's what it's going to be. They're going to change their behavior, or possibly somebody else will come along that really is more gifted than them, more insightful, more that does a better job. But usually, a really great leader will acknowledge that person too and go,
I'm fat.
okay.
I'm fascinated by the relationship between the one of the nine from an influence standpoint, the one of the nine,
The one of the 10.
well, the one of the nine
Okay.
that from an influence standpoint that uh, is a leader of the nine relative to the hierarchy of the one of the 10.
So the
So like,
question is
that's
the
what I'm
one a
fascinated
hierarchy?
with.
Is the one a hierarchy by rank, or is it hierarchy by culture? Like, or not by culture, by competency.
Let's
And
say if I look at the quote, the warrior is the chief executive officer. The 9 real fighters are the executives, let's say the C-suite, or and I'm interested, generally interested in the relationship between the one of the 9 and the one, because they're that mentor mentee dichotomy, or that
like the general and the captain.
yeah, I guess we use that language, like it, and where that the bonds, or the influence of the one relative to the one of the 9, and how that either leads to coup d'etat or to scale. What are your thoughts?
Well, first of all, I have seen many, many times that the one, meaning the one that's going to get us home, isn't necessarily the highest ranking person. As a matter of fact, a lot of time the highest ranking person is heavily leaning on the one who's the most creative in this situation, right? I've seen that a lot, where there's a company and there's a leader of there's a president of the company, but their best sales rep or their best marketing person or whatever is the one who seems to understand what's going on and understands how to address what's going on. And the owner may own the company, or the president may be the president. And if they're smart, they'll stay out of the way of the one who's getting us over the finish line. You never see the owner of the football team carrying the football on the field, right? There's always somebody who's the best, who's who's got the most heart, who's got the most athletic prowess, who's got the most whatever it is in that moment that wins the game. And it's not just because they got the last catch or the last run. It's because they, in the huddle, on the sidelines, in the locker room, are creating a, a level of unity in the group, and they're not saying I'm the savior, but by being the one that brings everybody together and is the sort of the evangelical one in the group that's saying we can do this. Here's how we're going to do it. The whole group goes, yeah, what he said, because the 80 and maybe even the 9, they're willing to do their part. They're willing to be great. They're willing to be the 8, the first string, right? But they're always more than one captain of a team, right? Most teams have multiple 3 or 4 captains, and the reason is because you're gonna need different people in different circumstances.
Chapter 1.
Of my
Where are
book?
we starting? Yeah, Unshackled.
Wow, chapter 1. Chapter 1. I wish I had the book in front of me. I don't have a physical copy yet, but I will in about 2 weeks. I will do it in the order of the course, not in order of the book, because we actually start with chapter 0. Chapter 0 in the book is really all about, is your idea even any good? And how do you start? How do you know if you should start? Is this going to be a viable offering to the marketplace? Does the market even want it? Right? So we start with chapter 0, which is this a good idea? And what are the basics that need to be done to just set up the entities and do the legal and the compliance and all that before you do your first deal, right? Chapter 1, though, is really all about the finish line. Chapter 1 is about what is the outcome that you're seeking. You're trading money and time and social and capital, and you're basically taking all of the things that you have in your arsenal and you're putting them on the line to some extent to try to make this thing happen. So why? What's the reason? What's the motivation? How will you know if you're successful? If you don't know that at the beginning, it's no different. I don't know about you, Jay. I know you've got a new home that you moved into recently. I've built a number of houses over the years. I'm a lot older than you. And, here's what I'll tell you. When you decide we're going to build a house, okay? So let's just say my wife and I are going to build a new home for us to live in, okay? So we would say things like, well, how many bedrooms do you think we ought to have? How many bathrooms should we have? What do we want the kitchen to be like? Do we want an open concept? Do we want it to be Tuscan style? Do we want it to be, like a antebellum mansion? Do we want a covered front porch? Do we want a pool? Like, we would talk about all those things. We would talk about the outcome that we wanted. What are we hoping to accomplish by building this house? And then once we say, yeah, we know we want 4 bedrooms, 4.5 or 4 full and 2 half baths. We want a kitchen that's going to have this big of a stove, and it's going to open into the dining room, but you can't see it from the front door. We want 1 level, 2 levels, 3 levels. We want a front staircase and a back staircase. Whatever it is, you think about it all and you make a list. And with the list, you go to the architect, and then the architect draws it. And once you get happy about the way it looks like on paper, then it goes to the engineer, and the engineer decides, well, this is what the roof's going to need to be, and the foundation's going to need to be, and how thick the walls need to be. And like, I live on the beach. You can't, I don't know if this is only audio or if there's video.
Both, yeah.
But if you see these bright things here, it's because we're having a sunny day at the beach. But right out there is the ocean, the Pacific Ocean. We get very high winds here in the wintertime. So we have hurricane windows on this house because the wind gets hard enough and they bend. You watch the windows bow in those storms. Craziest thing. But you live in Florida, so you understand. So that's true. Isn't that funny? We're on opposite corners. I'm in Northwest Oregon and you're in South Florida. So we're opposite sides of the continent here. But the point is, all those things get talked about before you go buy your first 2x4, before you pour concrete, before you get the excavation equipment out, before you do any of that. You decide, what are we going to do? What are we building? The problem with almost all entrepreneurs that I meet is that they just go and get a bunch of wood and say, I'm going to build something. And they go, oh, we'll figure it out as we go. And that makes for a pretty damn rickety structure.
That's funny.
And so chapter 1 is about, Stephen Covey talked about it, but so does the Bible. It's not a new concept to begin with the end in mind. So the way we teach and the way we live is because we can imagine the outcome that we want, but we don't have it right in front of us, right? And a lot of times, especially in a business situation or anything you're developing, maybe it's learning how to do stock investments or crypto investments. Maybe it's fixing and flipping real estate. For me, it's always been about building companies with employees and clients. But as you get closer, as you make progress towards your hoped for outcome, as you get a better vision of it, even if it started in your mind, but now you can see it out there on the horizon. As you get closer to it, it becomes this or something better, right? If anybody that's listening has ever built a house or been on a job site, well, it'd be your job site. Not that you're the contractor, but that you're the owner, right? You go in and you look at a room and you go, oh, I'm seeing an opportunity that I didn't think about when we did the drawings. Or I'll give you an example. This house right here, we came the day they were backfilling around the foundation. And as we stood on the street next to the contractor, the builder, the general contractor, right in front of us, we knew, oh, right there is going to be the garage. The garage of the house is right in front of where we're standing. There's a big rectangular hole down below us. What is that? And the contractor said to my wife and I, nothing. It's backfill. It'll be part of the base, part of the, the foundation. We'll backfill it. The garage will be there. And my wife said, looks like a theater room to me. And
Wow.
and I said, oh, that's a great idea. What would it take to make that into a theater? It's got concrete on 3 sides, well, including the roof. It would have great acoustics. It's a perfect size for a home theater. It'd be great. You know, you could put 8 or 12 seats in it. And he goes, well, the only problem is it wouldn't be tall enough. At the most, it would be 6 feet tall. And I said, well, right now it's just dirt, isn't it? Couldn't we dig it out? And he goes, yeah, we could dig it out. That's true. We could dig it out. I said, okay. And he said, but there'd still be a problem because even if we could dig it down a little bit, it's on a different level of the part of the basement that we've planned for. So we'd have to put like a 3x3 step, and then you'd have to step down into the room so we don't open a door and fall into the room. And I said, okay, or it was going to take a couple of steps. I said, okay, well, that's perfect. He goes, why is that perfect? I said, because we'll make stadium seating in the theater. So we'll have levels of we'll have great seating so you can see over. It'll be perfect. It'll be like a movie theater. He's like, okay, and that's what we have here now, right?
That's amazing.
But as you get, so here we'd drawn the plans, we'd done the engineering. It was, the foundation was poured. We're there, we're looking at it. And in the moment we go, oh, there's something we didn't anticipate. So it's the thing we wanted or something better, right? Because odds are we're going to end up with something better than we imagined because we didn't have enough experience to fully imagine the thing that we've built. But if we have a pretty damn clear idea of where we're going, we're going to get that, which we're already happy about, or something better. The idea is to do things in order. So first you decide what is it, and then you go about making the plans. Now, some people might say, well, so you write a business plan. And I would say, okay, write a business plan if you want to write a business plan. I hate writing business plans. I rarely write a business plan. I always write a vision statement. I describe what it is. I describe what it is when it's fully realized. The main reason to write a business plan is to force you to think about what you're doing instead of just talk about it. When you write it, you find the holes in your ideas. So, when you do some projections, you all of a sudden realize, maybe selling $1.99 widgets is not the fast path to millions or hundreds of millions of dollars. Or maybe it is. Maybe you can do a lot better selling chewing gum than you can selling airplanes, right? Because it's hard to sell airplanes and hard to service airplanes and hard to, but you can sell a lot of chewing gum. So I know you got to write it down and do your projections and figure out what is a likely outcome, not a pie in the sky outcome, but what are we doing here? And is the idea going to work? Is the thing that we're going to do going to carry the weight and provide for me something I'm willing to trade my time and resources for to get in exchange? In other words, if I'm going to put a bunch of time and effort into this thing and money into this thing, and there's no way it can pay me what I want to earn from it, then maybe I don't do it. But I shouldn't say nobody. Most people never ask these hard questions. They just get excited and they run.
Why do you think?
Well, it's out of ignorance every single time. And I don't mean that they're dumb. I just mean they don't know what they're doing. They don't know what they're doing. Thus, we wrote the book, right? To help people go, hey, there's a formula. If you follow the formula, if you follow the recipe, I bet on this program I've talked about recipes before, but I'll just reiterate. If you get a recipe for chocolate chip cookies and you follow the recipe for chocolate chip cookies, you will get chocolate chip cookies. You're not going to get sourdough bread. You're not going to get a trombone. You're going to get chocolate chip cookies if you follow the recipe. They may not be the best chocolate chip cookies anybody's ever eaten, but you're going to 100% of the time get chocolate chip cookies. That's why a predictable formula, a proven predictable formula, works better than going, I'm a brilliant, creative human. I'm going to go into my refrigerator in my pantry. I think, oh, that mustard is yummy. I like this Himalayan sea salt, and here's some chicken leftovers, and here's some asparagus, and I'm just going to start throwing stuff in a pan. Now, it might work out really great. It might be the best thing you ever ate in your life, and it may be like terrible dog food. We don't know. We don't know what it's going to be like because we're just making it up as we go. And I'll tell you what, let's say you make it up as you go and it turns out well. The next time you go to make a meal, not that meal, another meal, because we don't have a recipe. We just made shit up. See, I keep swearing. I'm sorry. I'm going to stop swearing on the show. I apologize.
Thanks.
You're welcome. Yeah, I apologize. If you just wing it, the odds of winning are very low.
Mm.
And the reason I've met so many people who've had a big exit and they've made money,
Wow.
and they never do it again. They never do it again. They beat them. And the worst thing is if they do it too young. If they have a big exit at 32 years old or 35 years old, they're going to spend the next 30 years beating their head against the wall and feeling bad about themselves because they can't understand why they were a one-hit wonder. And I'll tell you why they're a one-hit wonder, because they didn't have a recipe. They didn't have a formula. They got lucky. They were at the right place at the right time. So you see some people who have a big hit and never ever do it again. And then you see other people who it doesn't matter. They try something and it works, or they try something and they lose their shirt and they go to bankruptcy court. And then 2 weeks later, they're doing it again. They're building something successful because they know it's no different than the baseball player. If you can get a hit 3 out of 10 times, you're going to the Hall of Fame.
Wow.
Right? And you look at Richard Branson or any number of people who say, hey, you don't want to hear my success stories. You want to hear my failure stories, because that's where I learned a lot of stuff. And from the things I learned, I built all the things that you think are so cool. But the cool things that worked, I'm glad they worked, but I didn't learn anything from that. I learned stuff from the things where we struggled and failed. So we've got the people that have a recipe go, okay, I made the chocolate chip cookies. They were kind of dry. Okay, I made the chocolate chip cookies. They were too soggy. I burned them. Oh, I just tried making the chocolate chip cookies at a different altitude and it didn't work the way it worked at sea level. Right? But it worked kind of. And now I can identify where the problems are and adjust to it because I still have the recipe. And I could just make a few tweaks. Oh, and now they worked right. That's why there are a few people you see in your life, just like your quote, 10 people who are never going to, they shouldn't even be in the room. 80 people who are marking time. You know who a lot of those people are that I see? No offense to everybody that's listening to, I'm not trying to offend anybody, but I see people all the time who show up at motivational events. They'll go to, I won't drop any names, but they'll go, you can fill in the blank, a big name, big stadium, or very excited, jumping up and down, dancing, singing. And they go 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 over and over and over again, because they would rather spend money on motivation than turn that money into activity inside the business. They have more fun telling people about what they're doing than ever having to do it. Does that make sense? They'd rather talk about a cool idea. You know why people don't like to finish things? If you let's say you're writing a book. Well, it's not done yet. I'm doing a painting. Well, it's not finished yet. I'm writing a play. Well, I've got the first two acts, but it's not done. And they do it for years. And the reason is because if it's not done, you can't judge them. So they can just talk about it. They can be cool about it. They can brag about it. They can give little glimpses and people go, wow, that's amazing. But they can't be judged on something that's not finished. And so they'll just talk about it and they'll get their emotional strokes, their pat on the back, or you're so amazing, or wow, how interesting. But they'll never finish. And so you see people that go to these events and they're deep in credit card debt and they're robbing Peter to pay Paul, and they'll do everything around it. Oh, I need to learn how to give a speech. I need to learn Facebook ads. I need to learn some ancillary thing before I can do the thing. So chapter 1 of Unshackled is all about, let's get clarity on what the finish line is. And let's decide, is that something, what are my dreams? What are my goals? What are my desires? Will this project versus another project, because I could do other things. I don't have to just do one thing. There's no end of things I could start, right? Is this thing gonna be sufficient to give me the payoff that I want? Now, the interesting thing is, I have tens of thousands of business owner clients right now. And I would suspect if I interviewed them, and I've done this randomly, I've never done it scientifically, but most of them are only busy thinking about making the next sale. They're not thinking about organizing themselves to sell the company. They're not organizing themselves to retire from the company. They're not organizing themselves to no longer have to show up and be the most important employee. They're, as a matter of fact, some of them even like the idea of being the most important employee. They like knowing everything. They like people lined up outside their door saying, hey, boss, do you have 2 minutes? And then they can benevolently give the right answer and they feel cool. But they're a slave. And they are the epitome of self-employed. They just have the riskiest job you could possibly have, because you're responsible for you and all these other people and all these customers and all this infrastructure. And they're still thinking like a manager, not an owner. So that's what chapter 1's all about. Let's get clear on what you want as a human. And then if this business idea that you want to work on, or this investment idea, or this, if you're a manager inside of another company and you've just been given a big project to manage, am I up for this? Is this going to fulfill my desires? Or am I going to be tasked with doing something that I hate, makes my life miserable, and is never going to give me the payoff that I want for the sacrifice of my life's time? I have a birthday coming up. I'm going to be 60.
Wow.
And I'm all of a sudden, this has been a weird one for me. 60 is an old guy, but I don't think old, and I don't do things that are old, but I know it's not actually old, but it's, you're getting close to retirement age. I'm getting all the things from Social Security now in the mail. And it's
snap.
very weird to me. It's very weird. And I realize as I look back and go, even with all the medical advances that are happening, I'm certainly way past the middle of this life. Am I trading the time that I have for things that actually bring me satisfaction and joy and reward? And if I'm working to earn money for something, if I'm building a company to earn money, if I'm advising somebody who's paying me or whatever, if I'm doing that, if I'm sitting on a board that's paying me, is my trade of time for that money enough? Because I'm at a point now where I don't really do that anymore. I'm unwilling to trade time for money unless I'm also getting a lot of joy from the time I'm spending. I won't do anything that's a drudgery anymore. Nothing. I enjoy everything I do, or I go, no, I'm not going to do it.
How do you say no?
I say no. I'm not going to do that. I do that all the time. That's a real common thing for me. The older you get, if you are successful already. So if I was on the street and somebody says, hey, I'll pay you $20 to come sweep floors, I would say yes, even though I don't like to sweep floors, right? But I'm not in that position anymore. And so now people want me more than I want them. And I say no regularly. People offer to pay me a lot of money, but if it's not to do something that looks interesting, I don't do it. But somebody just came to me with something, and she said, I don't understand why you're saying yes to me, and I don't understand why you're discounting your price to me. And I said, well, because what you're working on, you're at the very beginning of doing something that has the chance of making a significant shift in humanity.
Wow.
You're facilitating conferences that are dealing with the human capital crisis on the continent of Africa. And you've got Google and American Express and Unilever, and you got a $64 billion privately held company that's driving this boat, and you're the company that is facilitating the conferences where these are, it's like Davos, but it's not for money, it's for human capital. And you've got all the CEOs of these big companies that you're working with on these advisory boards now to fix this. You don't think I want to be a part of that? Like, that's cool. I would do that for free because that's meaningful life's work. I don't care if anybody knows I'm ever involved. The thing that's cool is to have even a tiny bit of influence on how you could help a billion people on the world's richest resource continent to get out of gangs and dictators and slavery and battle all over that continent and turn it into a thriving, fabulous economy. I mean, how great would that be to make people safe and have food and water and live in a proper home and have heat when it's cold and have medicine when they're sick? If we can improve the human capital crisis that exists in Africa, if I can have a fraction of 1% influence on that, that is a cool thing
Wow.
to be involved in, which is why I told them yes.
Hmm.
Right? How cool is that? Right? It's not like saying, hey, yeah, I'm gonna coach you with your froyo business and help you sell more, help you, help people don't waste as many toppings on their ice cream, and you get people to buy the mediums more than the smalls. That's boring. I don't care how much you paid me on that. I would not be interested for very long on that.
You were referencing going back, those that are on that
Yeah.
circuit of digesting information. I have a quote I want your thoughts on. If I'm a customer of another culture, but I'm not getting customers for my culture, then I'm not being responsible, but I will be held accountable. That's what came to mind when you were
I
painting
think
that picture of like the circuit in a sense where I'm getting the education, but I'm not putting it to use, or I think I am by just continually getting it. How's it helping my business or my culture? I
well,
just
if I'm if
need to
I'm
unpack that.
following if I'm following you, because you did two things. You did your business that is not productive, is not you're not succeeding the way you want to, right? You're seeing a proximal example over here. You're a customer of somebody who's doing things really well that you can look at and try to emulate. Right. So far, you're not successfully emulating or creating a parallel path that is equally good or whatever. I like what you said, because you are responsible, because you've made if you have customers, that means you've made a promise to do something for those people in exchange for some value that you're getting back, money or something. So yeah, you may be responsible and failing in your responsibility, which means you're going to be accountable, which means they're not going to buy from you anymore, or you're not going to be able to pay your employees, or you're going to get sued, or something's going to happen that because your lack of thoughtfully beginning with the end in mind to create something that not only can sell but can fulfill in a great way. And if we're going to do chapters, we're going to talk about this in another chapter, another interview. But I'll tell you this, I had a very interesting, weird, circular thing happen to me last weekend. Can I tell you a story?
Yeah.
And I hope I'm not too far off on a tangent on telling you this, but this has to do with accountability and success or failure based on culture. So years ago, I wrote a little book called The Critical 20, and it's the 20 critical steps to business success. A little book, and we've given away and sold thousands and thousands of these little books. I use them at book signings a lot of time if it's a free book at some event. A lot of times I use that book because I think it's like cliff notes that people will read. So one of the chapters is about going slightly above and beyond the contract, the agreement. And I give a couple of examples. And I'll just skip everything except for the most salient example right here. One of them was, I said, back in 2001, I bought my very first brand new Mercedes-Benz. Okay. And I was so excited that, here I was, 36 years old, and I was buying a Mercedes. I'd had a used one, but I bought a brand new one from the dealership, an E350. And I was so excited to have or E320, it was that first one, E320. And I was so excited to have this car. Well, when I picked it up, so we did the deal, finished in the finance office, I go out to get the car, and there are a few extra things. They'd put in some rubber floor mats. They'd give me some keychains. And I think that was it that day. And then about a week later, I get in the mail a box from Mercedes-Benz. And in the box were 2 Mercedes medallion chocolates that were big. They had to be like 5 inches in diameter. These big chocolates that were beautifully foil wrapped in a box. So you open it up, and the whole thing is just 2 different colored, foil over these milk chocolate medallions. And then about 3 or 4 weeks later, I get a box, and I open the box, and there's 2 Mercedes mugs and some branded coffee in the thing. And over the first year, they sent me about 4 or 5 boxes of little things in the mail. So I wrote about that in the book. And I said, see, if I just went and bought the car, and I got the car and I liked the car, when it comes time to get the next car, I might go to the same dealership, or I might go to one that's a little closer to where I live, or I might go to, instead of Mercedes, I might go to BMW or Audi, right? And try it. But these guys, for probably the cost of $50 or $60, went just a little bit above and beyond the agreed upon contract, right? Money for a car. They gave me a little more that wasn't in the sales material, wasn't advertised, wasn't told to me when I was buying the car. They just did it quietly. Okay. So fast forward to this last weekend. I had my car, my current 2001, which is getting ready to be replaced. I've ordered a 25 now from Mercedes, but about every 3 years I get a new car. And during the pandemic, I ended up getting it very late. Everything was going slow with computer chip problems. So almost in 22, I got a 2021. So anyway, because one became available. So anyway, I had my car in for service, scheduled service. I had their loaner car. I was driving back from the beach, back 90 minutes to the dealership to then go further on up to do something about 45 minutes further north. It's a hassle to get to the dealership. I'm on the interstate, and there's a wreck on the interstate. And where I was going to get there about 20 minutes before closing, I ended up getting there 20 after closing on the weekend, right? Now, maybe if for most people that live close to town or whatever, they think no big deal. But for me, it's a 90-minute drive to get to the dealership. It's a hassle. You got to drive from the beach over the mountains to the dealership. Okay. So my wife goes, okay, well, I guess, let's just go. Let's go on north. I said, no, hold on. So I walk around from service over to sales, and I walk right past the gauntlet of salespeople that are waiting. Hey, welcome in. What can I help you with? Nope, nothing. Can I help you? Can I help you? Nope. I go right up to the manager's desk, and you can imagine a Mercedes-Benz dealership full of all these beautiful, shiny cars. and a big round desk where there's like 3 managers behind the desk. And I said, hey, folks, I'm sorry to bug you. There's a wreck on the freeway. My car is ready to be picked up. I have your loaner car. I won't be able to get back here for at least 5 more days. I'd really like to swap cars, but service is closed. Is there anything we can do about it? There was a guy standing there about my age that had something that said like it's some kind of a weird like department on his. It showed their logo and then some department on there on his sweatshirt or pullover, and the main guy behind the desk stood up. Well, the guy near me says, "Oh, I think we can help you with that," and then the central guy at the desk stands up, and the guy standing on the outside of the desk and the other guy come out, and they walk with my wife and I through. They unlock the service bay. They go into the big temple of service, which you get at a big Mercedes dealership or any big car dealership. It's a huge, this is the largest by volume dealership in the West Coast. So it's a big location. And they take me in there, they get somebody out, they get my car. And in the whole process, I said, well, guys, thank you so much. My name's Aaron Young. And one guy says, my name is Jeff, the first guy. And the other guy says, my name's Noel. He's a French guy. I said, Noel, what do you do here? He said, I'm the general manager of the store. So he's the big boss, right? And I said, Jeff, by any chance, are you Jeff Swickard, the owner of 30 dealerships and 40 some marquees? Like, so they might have a Chrysler Plymouth or whatever, store, right? Or Chrysler Jeep. Yep. The owner and the general manager happened to be the people that were standing there that night when I walked up to the desk. And they were like, yep, let's go get your car. Absolutely, no problem. Now, as we talked, I said, I've been coming to your dealership for almost 25 years now. I bought my first used car from you in the 97, bought my first new car in 2001, and you have a car on order for me for 2025 that I'm supposed to get in July. They said, wow, thank you so much. I said, I even wrote about you in a book. And they're like, are you serious? That's so cool. I said, hold on. And they brought my car in from where it was parked, and they brought it back into the dealership to hand it off to me. And I always have a book in my car, and I reached into the back, grabbed a book, brought it over, opened the book, said, here's the story. The owner just about got cried. He was like, wow, I had no idea that anybody had ever written about what we do here. And he said, I've got a meeting with all the general managers in Las Vegas next week. So the week we're taping this. And he said, do you mind if I take a picture and I read the story from your book? I said, I would be honored. So we took my wife and I, the GM and the owner, did the technician took the picture of us, and the guy was thrilled. But I thought, what a circular loop here. I had a great experience in 2001. I wrote about it, and all these years later, they're still delivering on above and beyond service.
Wow.
So when we talk about accountability and responsibility, they're going to be accountable and responsible for the consequences of their actions, right? I just wonder if the GM and the owner hadn't been standing there and had been the assistant sales manager who's on a Saturday evening, would they have said, geez, sorry, it's closed, everybody's gone? Or would they have opened it up? I don't know the answer to that. I hope it was the former. No, I mean the latter. I hope they would have opened it up, because that is the culture. I hope. But here's what I know. There was not even, the only thing that gives me pause is that the GM and the other guys sitting there all looked at the guy that was standing up on the outside of the desk right next to where I walked up. They all looked at him. It was that long, but I saw the shift of power. I was looking at them. They looked at him. I all of a sudden knew who the boss was. And he was like, absolutely, let's get it. And then stood there and talked to us for 45 minutes and kept his team, including his GM, in there and wanted to know the whole story. Then, you know what the funny thing is for being great in delivering to your customer? Then he wanted to know what I do. And I told him we do asset protection, strategic tax planning, and buy and sell companies. Then he's like, oh, we should probably talk again. So it can come back to you in ways that you don't expect. I didn't go in there looking to sell anything. All I wanted to do is pick up my car. I just wanted the completion of the transaction. And once again, they exceeded my expectations. And that's why I go back for 2.5 decades, because I can have a predictable, positive experience every time. That's responsibility and accountability. If you're the one responsible and you do a poor job, the consequence, the accountability is people may choose not to come back. On the other hand, you know, the worst thing you can do, it's almost better to have a bad attitude. It's almost better to just be a jerk, and people either think you're an interesting old curmudgeon or they won't come back. The worst thing you can do is be unpredictable.
Wow.
If you go to a restaurant and you go and you have a great experience and you go back and the second time you have a bad experience with just say the food or the wait staff or the way they greet you or anything, if it becomes unpredictable, you can't anticipate what's going to happen. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's okay, sometimes it's bad. I promise you, you will stop going to the place. You just will go, it's not worth my effort. No, let's never go there. I know we had great food that time, but it's just, no, let's go somewhere else. And you can almost always predict that crummy restaurant that doesn't work is like probably the only restaurant that one person had. It's maybe their first restaurant. They're hiring friends. They don't know how to hire. They don't know how to schedule. They don't know how to get the right people in the back. And so you get unpredictable experiences. You know what it is? You know why you can go to Ruth's Chris anywhere in the world and have a very predictable experience? You know why? There's a formula. There's a recipe. There's a way to do it. That's what the book teaches. That's what Unshackled is all about. How do we create predictable results that get us to a predetermined or better outcome? And how do we do that and not become a slave or self-employed? How do we build something that works harder for us than we work for it? And it starts with your vision. It starts deciding where are we going? What do we stand for? What are our values? What do we stand against? What will we always be? What will we never be? You know, we can make a decision about this is how we talk to clients. And then if you have a new person and they do something outside the culture, if the culture is strong enough, the owner doesn't have to do anything. The other employees will say, oh man, we don't do it like that here. I know you're new. Let me tell you, we would never talk to a customer like that here. We would always get it done on time. You know, we would be a very responsible steward within our stewardship, because we've been trusted inside this culture to deliver in a certain way. That's what you're teaching, and that's what we're endeavoring to teach in a pragmatic way, so we can build companies that are not only strong and are great for their employer and employee, but are a valuable asset that can be passed down or sold. And if it's passed down or sold, the owner doesn't have to stick around for 2 to 3 years working their way out of it, because the systems already work, whether or not the owner's there or not. That's a valuable asset to have.
If you're listening to this episode, I challenge you to pick up Unshackled Like
Yeah, what
buy your copy. Uh, follow Aaron. Um, listen to our other episodes together because I think this one was more of a masterclass. Frankly, I feel like everything we've done up to this point has like been a like the it's like a foreshadow for this or a preface.
yeah, I think we've had more philosophical conversations, less practical application, you know.
I'm going to re-listen to this. I challenge all of you to re-listen to this. And man, I'm already looking forward to chapter 1, not 0.
No, I
One.
gave you 0 and 1 this time.
Okay, chapter 2.
Chapter 2 will that'll be a fun conversation. They're all fun conversations. This is what works in business, it works in families too. It works on your softball league, it works at your church, it works anywhere. This is how to build a successful organization that can transcend the founder.
Mm. Please leave us a review on the Culture Matters podcast. Follow Aaron Scott Young. Pick up Unshackled. We will see you next time on the Culture Matters podcast.